am live. I am reading out of Lord of the Horizon. I am now in part 4 of this book, chapter 5. This is a book by Joan Grant. She was a writer of her own far memories, her incarnations, her previous incarnations, and here she describes a life as Ra-Ab, a male in ancient Egypt. Chapter 5. The Unseen Guest. Senusert's face told me before he spoke that my journey to the royal city might be to no purpose. He won't see me? I was less asking a question than stating a fact. No. At first I thought there was hope, for he said, Ra-Ab wants to see me. He was always my friend, Ra-Ab. Then he laughed, that terrible cold laugh I have come to dread, and said, why should I trust Ra-Ab? You and he are brothers in Horus. You love Egypt and Egyptians. You do not love Pharaoh. The watch has made me Pharaoh, and when they are ready they will make a new Pharaoh. Take care, Senusert, lest they deceive you as they have deceived me. Deceive you so much that you think yourself a stronger man than you are, and take up a burden which is too heavy for you to carry. He is so terribly alone, Ra-Ab. Is there nothing we can do to help him? He is like a man dying of thirst, yet who flings down the cup because he thinks the water in it is poisoned. Or like a man with a pestilence, afraid he will contaminate his fellows. The people have not yet realized what has happened to him. He carries out all formal ceremonies, and afterwards he says to me bitterly, there is neither good nor evil in a statue. It is only a symbol of power. That is why, my son, I have become only a symbol of rulership. In the early days of my reign I erected statues of myself in many nomes, and on the anniversary of my taking the crook and flail, my people put flowers and fruit before them as though they were god statues. Those statues will never fail the people, for they see their ideal held safe for them in stone. When I have still further subdued my spirit, I shall be as worthy as a statue to receive their honor. I shall be without virtue and without the power to do harm. Once I hoped that my voice would be the voice of Egypt and my strength her protection. They must never know how unworthy I have proved myself, how small a man holds this high office. My enemies think that I shall betray Egypt, but the wise farmer husbands a little grain against the time of famine, and even when his children cry for hunger, he does not break the seal on this last store until it becomes vital. I too have a last store on which to draw in my extremity. Only a friend can know a man's heart. Only a friend can see beyond the mask he turns to the world. I have found the courage to deny myself all friendship. I shall continue to live entirely alone. My body will perform the ceremonials necessary to Pharaoh, and my tongue has so long been trained in the formalities that it will continue to be my faithful servant until the final breath. There were tears in Senusert's eyes, and his voice broke on the last words. Then he went on. The only time he gains an illusion of happiness is when he is choosing the furnishing of his tomb. I've seen him stroke an alabaster vase, as another man might caress the curve of a woman's shoulder, and whisper to one of his canopic jars, soon we shall be free to enjoy each other in the long security of my pyramid. No one will ever disturb us again, for the drop stones are heavy, and if they should be passed, though I think that would be impossible, there are false passages which leads to shafts down, which a thief would fall and perish. He would never find me. I shall be at last alone, secure forever from both friends and enemies. He is always warning me against friends, Ra-Ab. He even tried to make me send Amenemhet away. I told him that nothing would make me betray Amenemhet, and he laughed at me and said, I drink to the brave son who is so sure that he will never become like his father. Even when I was older than you are, I believed in friendship, but now I am wiser. I know that if I allow any man to become my friend, he will see my heart, and seeing it, he will become my enemy. Can the priests do nothing for him? He will not see them. He only goes to the temple to make ceremonial offering. How many of the people close to him realize his torment? Very few, and those say nothing. He sits in audience to receive tribute. He still has every plan for new buildings, new roads brought to him for sealing. The army tallies go to him, and his judgment in these matters is as clear and just as it has always been, except for festival banquets, which he occasionally attends. He always eats alone. He has never been fond of formal entertainments, but when I was a child I remember that he liked a friend, or perhaps 2 or 3, to share the evening with him. I doubt if even the people who used to share those hours with him realize that others no longer come to the palace. Each thinks he has offended Pharaoh in some way, or that he has grown tired of their company, so they never mention it. After all, the people do not think less of the gods because the gods do not ask them to share a cup of wine. I have been 7 days in the city and have heard nothing to suggest that any of the nobles are offended at not being asked to take more part in the life of the court. And of you, everywhere, I hear praise of your courtesy, your bravery, your generosity, the quickness of your wit. I am very glad, Ra-Ab, that I have thus been able to repay a little of the happiness which I found in the Oryx. You taught me to be happy. That is why it is easy for me not to make people disappointed. Father's happiness lasted such a short time, and the memory of it only makes the present more bitter by contrast. Are the servants curious to know why he lives so much alone? He paused before answering and then said reluctantly, They don't realize that he does. Why? I'm frightened that one day they will discover that his guests are invisible. What do you mean? Do you remember that there is a door leading into the garden from his private apartments by which his personal friends used to enter the palace? That entrance was originally made so that the eyes of Horus might come to visit Pharaoh at any time without their presence arousing suspicion or jealousy. For a long time I thought the door was still being used, for I heard voices coming from his room after the servants had taken away the food. Then one night I realized that there was only one voice, his own. Either the persons who answered him always spoke in a whisper, or else there was no answer. The next time I heard him talking, I waited in the garden to see who came out through the private door, but no one came out. And when I went back to the house, I found him alone. You mean he talks to himself? Either to himself or to some uneasy ghost who returns to visit him. It is so surprising, Senusert, that a man should talk to a ghost. If Mary were to die before me, I think she would know that I was lonely for her physical presence, and when she came to comfort me, should I not speak to her in words as well as in thought? A spirit who comes in love is not what I mean by a ghost. You would never be afraid of Mary. You would never mock her. You would never cry out that she was powerless to hurt you, and that even when you too were dead, you would still be beyond her power because you had sworn to spend eternity in your tomb. You have heard him speak like this? Yes, many times. I have a request to make, Ra-Ab. I want you to spy on my father, though to do so is to risk death. If he knows what you have done, he will have you killed, and even the co-ruler could not defend you from Pharaoh. I would not ask you to do this unless I knew it was the only way by which you could judge if there is any means by which he might be cured. I could repeat what I overheard, but that is not enough. You must hear the quality of his voice before you can hope to find what has caused this desperate sickness of the soul. How shall it best be done? There is a strong trellis outside the room where my father entertains his invisible guest. High in the wall there is a grating, and by climbing the trellis you can hear all that is said inside the room. It is dangerous, for he is always uneasy with suspicions. At the slightest sound he might dash out through the private entrance, and if he did so he would see you before you could get away. There are always guards within call. He is terrified of being spied on, and those he suspects may be killed before they have a chance to make any explanations. There have been spies, though only in his imagination. The lover of one of the women servants was trying to get out of the palace early one morning without being seen. He heard a guard coming and hid behind some bushes, which rustled, and so betrayed his presence. Father heard him being taken and ordered that he be killed immediately. It was from the woman that I heard the truth. She begged me to intervene for him, but I could do nothing. His body had already been thrown into the river. The night was very still. I waited in the little pavilion on the river walk, watching for the light which Senusert would set in his window if he could hear his father begin to talk with the unseen presence. 3 nights I had waited there in vain. Each time I had slid down the rope into my waiting boat and returned by the water steps to the house where I was staying. It was the dark of the moon, but the stars were brilliant. Shapes of trees stood out against the denser darkness of the palace. A light flowered and flickered in the window I was watching. Twice, then a third time, it passed from side to side. I knew then that I must climb the trellis, and again I asked Ra-Ab that I might make no sound. I asked Ra that I might make no sound. A bat swirled out of the vine, its squeak sounding loud as the challenge of a sentry. Gradually I let my full weight be taken by the wooden rods and stealthily began to mount. Until my head was level with the grating I could hear nothing. Then, quite suddenly, I could hear as clearly as though I were in the room. Amenemhet's voice sounded calm and steady. He might have been speaking to me as if he had so often done. Every few moments he paused as though he listened to an answering voice. Now we may talk together undisturbed, for the servants have gone and will not return until I summon them. I must apologize for a small discourtesy. You will have to drink from my wine cup, for they have forgotten to leave a second one. The wine is rare and smooth upon the tongue. You see, I remember your taste. Are you still looking for your grandson, that little boy whom no one but you could love? The scribe loved him, though, but you had the scribe killed. It was impertinent for a scribe to love the son of Pharaoh. It took you a long time to find out where the boy was hidden, nearly 2 years. He had forgotten you by then, forgotten that he was tied to you because he was afraid of being lonely. But he had found other people to love, people who didn't hold friendship at such high purchase as did his grandmother. You had a very pretty plot by which to get him back, didn't you, O daughter of a foreigner? Your spies told you that I had sent Senusert to the Oryx, and that you would not be allowed to cross the boundary into that nome. It was a clever scheme of yours to gain entry to the house of Ra-Ab Hotep by pretending to be a woman unjustly condemned to exile by the reed. You would have begged Senusert not to betray you, saying that you had come to him only because you were starving for love. He might have believed you, even though he is my son. He is over-trustful. Gradually you would have got him back into your power and would have destroyed him just as you are trying to destroy me. I knew that you planned to leave for the Oryx on the morrow, but you thought I was deceived by your story that you wished to return for a while to the summer palace. You were pleased when I asked you to have the evening meal with me on that last night, here in this room. You took it for a sign that your deception of me was complete. I chose the meal myself, for the rules of courtesy decree that the guest who goes a long journey shall be sustained by the best that his host can provide. Even you admitted that the quails were roasted to perfection, that the cream and honey, crushed almonds and orange buds had never before been blended with so rare a subtlety. With them we drank a wine paler than this. Do you remember? You asked if I would give you a jar of it to take with you to the north. I promised that you should have 2 of them, and I kept my promise. As you have seen, there is 1 jar at the head and 1 at the foot of your sarcophagus. This wine we are now sharing is of the same vintage that we drank when you had finished eating apricots. You had 5 apricots, and you're surprised that I remember every detail of our little meal so clearly. But you see, it was not a meal like other meals. It was only a host watching his guest eat apricots. For when you had finished them, you would drink the second wine, the wine that since then has been kept only for Pharaoh. I wondered, will she take another apricot before she drinks? What would you have thought if I had asked? The moments of your life could be measured in apricots. Each little stone is like one of the great steles which marks a day's journey on the royal road. And you have come to the end of your journey, for I have sworn that with this flail I will defend my people from their enemies. Their enemies, do you understand? You are Pharaoh's enemy. You would destroy his son. You are Egypt's enemy. You would destroy Pharaoh. You turned to look at me before you went away. Do you remember how I was standing at the far side of this table, and there was a lamp between us? We were divided by the light, yet both of us were in shadow. You put your hand up to your throat as though you suddenly found it difficult to swallow, and you said, I think I shall not see you tomorrow, Amenemhet, but I shall think of you on my journey, and I shall not forget the wine. And then you went away, holding yourself very upright as you always did. Even when you were old, you carried yourself like a young woman and a princess. I was not sure how much you meant by those last words, the last anyone heard you speak. Yet I must have understood them, for I was not surprised when you came back to share another evening with me. You're a very patient guest, for night after night you come here, and night after night I drink the toast we drank together. Always you expect that at last there will be that same slight bitter taste in my wine as there was in yours, that tomorrow there will again be the sound of lamentation in the palace, though this time it will not be your name that they cry, but mine. You think that when I have no longer this aged flesh, you to protect me I shall be your prisoner. But you are wrong, O foreign woman whose daughter I have loved. My priests are strong, and they shall place such seals upon my tomb that no one shall enter it, not even fiends of Set, not even you. When I am dead you shall wander alone, and no one will give you shelter. You may come back to this room, and no one will see you. You may tap on the shutters of my room and whisper, Amenemhet, Amenemhet, I have returned, yet no one will hear you. You may make the lamp flicker, and though a man may shiver in a sudden drought, no one will notice you. I am the only mortal with whom you share a secret, and you have no other causeway of return. Not love, nor truth, nor a heart's gratitude, and hate can build no causeway from the tomb, save to the one you hate, and who hates you. Then I heard he whom I loved, my friend, walk from the room and go away, alone. So this was chapter 5. Today is Monday, 22nd of April.